Bonjour tout le monde. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous présenter ma nouvelle aquarelle fine de Pébéo. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to present you a new paint that I bought in France, Pébéo watercolor, fine watercolor. I'm going to show you how I go about dealing with new paints. So what I'm going to do is make a color chart. I always do that. And I'm going to tell you about my first experiences with the art supplies. So things I'm going to be looking at is light fastness, the palette that they chose that is standard in this box. I'm going to tell you about the box and how good it works. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So I'm going to shift over to my camera. That's going to be on my desk, filming down onto the paper so you can see really well what I'm doing. Come along with me. Right now I'm going to unpack the Pébéo, and I'm going to show you what I do with new watercolors, how I get to know them and how I work with them. I'm also going to share with you my first impressions of it. And what I already said, what I really like about this box that I bought in France for only €12.95, which will be about $14 and something. It's really cheap. I took a very quick glance at some user experiences on the internet and they are not positive. It appears that this cheap quality of Pébéo, this cheap version, its studio version, is now produced in China rather than in France, and apparently the quality has deteriorated drastically according to users of the old studio quality paint. Pébéo does also have a better quality paint available. I didn't buy that, I bought the studio. I am expecting a Cotman-like quality. Cotman, Van Gogh, they are both very comparable and they are both very delicious paints for a good price that are light fast, have good pigments, are really easy to use, well, you know, they're very good paints for good price. So that's what I'm expecting here. But those paints, they will set you back over €10 more for the same set. So what I'm wondering now is, this is a lovely, delicious tin box. You know, so they can't have, you know, the price difference is not in the tin. The tin is fantastic. It's got a ring on the back. So if you want to work on an easel, you can just put your finger, in like this and hold the tin like a painter's palette. I never do that. I always work on a table, so no problem. So then I wonder if the price difference would perhaps be in the quality of the paint, which is, I think, to be expected, but I'm hoping to be surprised. Well, it's got an incredible small leaflet that says nothing really. No, what it says is that the colors don't get much lighter when they dry. So that's what you would expect. Then you can take out the tin to which the pans are attached. You can take it out, which is nice. It's wrapped in plastic. I don't know why. I don't know if that's necessary. And then each individual pan is wrapped in paper, and I'm really happy for that, and I'm going to show you why, because I've also bought 2 different brands of paint that do not have a paper wrap, and I want to show you exactly why I love it so much. So first thing I'm going to do is unpack or unwrap these pans, but now I see they're not fully wrapped. What do they expect me to do with this? Because the wrap is actually glued to the side of the pan, and I'm not happy about this at all, because this is messing up my plans. So I think I'm gonna need a knife, because I usually use the paper wraps to do this with. I'll show you.
when I buy new paints, what I do is I unwrap the pans, I stick the little piece of paper onto a journal page, and I paint the color right underneath. And why I do that is because the wrap, the color on the wrap, never ever presents the real color, of course. So, but then again, I do want to keep all this information stored. I want to know about light fastness, I want to know about certain characteristics of the paint, and above all, I want to know the name of the paint, and I want to know the number, the code of the paint, so that when I run out of it, I can order new paint online. So this is how I make my color charts, and what I usually do, and I don't think I will be doing that with this brand, is that I go online and I find out how many colors there are, and then I make I draw lines that will, like here, I draw a structure, and then I start filling them in, and I draw a square space for every color that the brand has. And why I do that is because I might in the future buy additional colors, and then I, like here, I made this color chart complete in a few different goes, and as you can see, 2 colors I don't have yet. And I will have them one day probably, but that's why I do that. So there are open spaces here left for other colors. Having read the pretty bad reviews on the Pébéo paints, I don't think I will be buying additional colors. So for this, I'm going to make a 12 color palette only. But if you are trying, I do have the Sennelier watercolor brand. I bought that too. It's a brand I've been meaning to try out for a long time, and I will probably make keep spaces for all the colors. And I know it's got a lot of colors, but I'm really crazy about that paint. So this is a Fine Arts pastel pencil color chart by Cretacolor. I'm going to start on a new page altogether. Okay, so now I've stuck all the wraps onto my sheet of paper, and now it's finally time to paint. What I often do is I have this little spray filled with water, and what I often do is I spray some water onto the palette to make it wet, and it will help me lift some paint off the palette and work with it. I don't always do that, but in this case I want to do a very quick color chart, so I don't want to be spending too much time here. What I do then is I have a medium-sized, don't even know what size, I think this is a 4 or 5 brush, and I have a piece of cloth right by my side to just dry off the brush. What I'm first going to do is I'm going to just dry the paint, so wetting the brush and putting on some paint. And I only do half of it. Then I just wipe off the water on that piece of cloth. And I'm going to use water only to see how well the color flows. So all I did was I laid a wet brush against the paint so that the paint started running. You will see that better, the effect, when I use darker colors. So I'm laying it on heavily and pretty wet, because when I do that, when I lay it on pretty wet, you will see that it helps the flow. And what the reason why I flow is two things. In the first place, it helps me see the character of the paint. How well does it flow? That's the first thing. But also, it helps me see how much pigments are in the paint actually. Because if you have a paint that doesn't have very good pigments in there, then it doesn't flow as easily. Now, this is the paint that had the white powder on it. It's the, I think, a vermilion color. No, cadmium red. Primary red cadmium. It's pale, very pale. Normally when I lay paint on paper this thick, it's almost like gouache. And what I notice is that it's very thin. It's a rather ethereal. This just didn't flow very well either. So I'm laying the paint on quite heavily. This is a beautiful color, by the way. This is alizarin crimson, which I think is more like magenta than the other alizarin crimsons that I have. And this flows nicely. This has got a really good flow to it. So this is what you do, of course. I mean, you study the behavior of the paint. Oh, that's a really dark but lovely blue. It's primary phthalo blue. So phthalo blue also always has a greenish color in it. It in many brands, phthalo blue, you know, moves towards turquoise. So now I'm probably going to the real blue. Yes. This is cobalt blue, and cobalt blue is always a bit, this can't be real pigment, of course, for this price. But cobalt blue is always a bit tame. This is permanent green. What a strange color this is. This is a very chemical permanent green. I don't think I have any brand that has a color like this. No, strange. Right, then we're going to earth green, which is a really strange color to be putting into a starter palette. Ugh. It's muddy, very muddy, and also this is not, I can tell from the color, this is not a good pigment at all, because earth green is a very, very different color. Real earth green is a very different color. These colors seem a little chemical to me, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I have a feeling that these colors are a long way from good pigments. This is not a quality of paint I would advise you to use. I can already tell, also by the behavior of the paint. It doesn't mean you can't work with, I mean, of course you can work with this, but it will probably not give you the joy that good brands will give you. Some colors take, even though that I have wetted the pans, some colors do take quite some work to come off the palette. and little flow some have. Oh, that's a good black. It's a very thick black. And that's good. Okay, so this is my color chart and it needs to dry. Sometimes you can use a blow dryer, but in this case you have to realize that the page is very wet. So if you put a blow dryer on top of it, you will see the paint running to all sides. So now I have made a color chart. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to be making a small color chart that will fit into this box with the real colors. And then I immediately noticed that I'm putting the numbers of the colors onto paper. No, took a little too much space for that. This brand of paint comes only in 28 colors, which is not much at all. And what I can see here is that the yellows really do have, there's too little difference between these yellows for a starter set. That is a shame. And what I also notice is when I put my brush back onto the paint that is still wet, it takes an effort to get some color off. This red, this alizarin crimson was easier, but the other paints were a little hard to get off from my palette. Oh, now I have to be careful because I chose a little piece of paper that's so small, so tiny, that there's no space for my hands. They have chosen a very weird color palette, and for that reason I would never ever advise you to buy this brand of paint, to buy this starter kit. And I don't think, based on this experience, I don't think I would advise you to try out this paint at all. If you're looking for a cheap set, then I think you better save up just a little bit longer and buy a set that's going to make you happy, because this I don't think is going to make you happy. I'm going to explain to you exactly why. In the first place, looking at these colors, you can see that Pébéo has made cheap choices, meaning that what they did actually is not form a professional based set of colors. They dry up very pale, some colors very pale. These, I think so far every color dries up pretty pale, a lot paler than when you put them on wet. That is a sign of cheap paints. There is too little difference between the two yellows. They are not very far off in color tones, and when you want to have a good starter palette, you will always have a cold yellow and a warm yellow. In this case, neither of them is warm. There is a cold yellow, you know, that would have been fine, but the jaune, the cadmium yellow here is not a warm tone. This is a very bad quality, a very badly pigmented paint, because normally cadmium colors are quite intense and this is pale. The same applies to the reds. The reds here, well, it pales incredibly. So I wouldn't advise to use this. This is the cadmium red. Cadmium is not a very expensive pigment. It should have much more power. The alizarin crimson is a beautiful pink that you could use in watercolors. The phthalo blue, I think, is okay as a color, but again, it is a strange choice to put these two blues right next to each other in this set of paints. There isn't too big a difference. It isn't too dark a blue, and the phthalo blue really looks like cyan, which is good, and the alizarin crimson looks like magenta, which is good. So I think these two colors are okay, as is the pale yellow, but I think the choice for this cobalt blue is, well, I'm not sure. I do notice one thing about this cobalt blue: it dries up pretty beautifully, I have to say. Then we move on to the greens, and well, this permanent green is chemical. It's almost like nuclear. It's a very strange permanent green. But what's worse in this set is the choice to insert earth green. There should always be a light green and a dark green, or a cold green and a warm green. And in this case, they inserted earth green. Earth green is usually a pigment that's not very vibrant. It's not very intense. It's, well, earthy, but almost like a washed out earthy tone. In this case, what we get is sort of an army green. And it is usable as a color. It's almost sort of a moss green. It contains a lot of gray, and it's usable, but the choice for these two is kind of weird. I've never ever seen this earth green used in a starter kit, because this color, I think, is only usable when you're doing landscapes, or perhaps you could use this for some shading in portraits. But other than that, I don't really see much use for this color. There is a yellow ochre that is fine. When applying it, it seems a bit tame. Yellow ochre is a very cheap pigment, so you could have a much more vibrant effect. Then there is the burnt sienna, which is pale, pale, pale. I had to work my brush a bit to get some color onto paper, and then it dries up, and, well, for the work that I've done and for the amount of paint I put on the paper, it could be a lot more vibrant. Then there is the burnt umber, and that looks okay, although burnt umber could be a little darker, but it's okay, it's usable. And then the black was fine. You can see a little bit, this paint, the phthalo blue tends to granulate just a little when adding water to it, but other than that, the pigments seem to be pretty fine. Although I have to say, I'm wondering if these are pigments at all. We'll see. So this is the little color chart I will be putting into my paint box. Now I'm going to do the last little experiment with this paint to get to know it better. I'm going to mix. I'm going to first mix on the paper, and then I'm going to mix in the box. So let's mix up a little bit of this blue and some yellow. Let's make green. Let's see if it makes a green at all. It does. And I'm just playing with it. I'm just seeing if I can make purples and greens and what happens. And I'm also looking at the flow characteristics of this paint. And it's normal for some pigments to be dominant. Some pigments, they wash over other colors, like, you know, no problem at all. And that's very normal. In this case, I don't see pigment behavior. I don't know if you know what I mean with that, but what I say is that every pigment has its own color. Yellow, there are some yellows that when you touch, I have yellow on my brush, and when you touch a different color of paint, you will see the yellow just pushing out the other pigments. In this case, there is no such thing. It's not happening. And the green that I'm getting now is getting a little muddy. And not very, but getting it just become a nice color. I like this mixed green a lot better than the original green. But when you get muddiness from mixing up only two colors, can only mean one thing, that the paint has either too many pigments in it already to create a color, or it's not a pigment at all that they have been using. See, there is no mixing at all with this cadmium yellow. It doesn't seem to mix at all with the green. It should flow into one another, and like I said, this is not very good quality at all, and such a shame, because I'm going to try and make a nice orange, and I don't think it's going to be easy, because this is not a nice red. I'm going to be using the cadmium yellow for that, because it's a warmer, it should be a warmer yellow, and this too becomes muddy. There is no such thing as a bright orange coming out of this. It's almost peach color that comes out. So I'm going to try again using the primary cadmium red, and this time I'm going to be using the colder yellow. Oh god, no. This is almost getting brown. Ugh. Horrible. No. Fail, big fail. So let's try the alizarin crimson that looks so like magenta. Let's see if we can make a nice orange out of that one using the primary cadmium yellow. Let's see what happens. And again, I am getting a brown-like version. I'm getting mud. Horrible. Ugh. By the way, this muddy color, I'm saying horrible because what I'm hoping to find in a fine quality watercolor is I'm hoping to find a beautiful bright, you know, color combination, because the reason they have these starter sets is because you can mix your own colors. I have been a little enthusiastic on the water, so I'm going to just take it off with a cotton swab. Again, a lot of mud. I'm expecting vibrant colors here, so I'm hugely disappointed, I have to say. Now I'm going to try and do something else, something you can do when you're painting and you want to create shadows, is adding black. And again, as you can see, there is almost a sharp line between these two colors, whereas they are both wet. They should meet and they should start to mix up by themselves, and they are hardly doing so. So that to me is a sign I am not dealing with pigments at all. I have a hard time mixing these up even. They don't want to mix. Weird. Look, it doesn't run. It should run. So what I'm dealing with here is a very, very, very cheap set of paints. And I mean, it was cheap in the shop, but in this case, it was too cheap. I will not use this brand. It is usable because these muddy oranges can be used for skin tones, because this one can actually be mixed up with just a little bit of gouache, and then you have a nice white gouache, and then you have a nice skin tone. You can use them, but as a starter kit of paint, you know, I am missing properties that you will need to get started. This is going to give you a lot of frustration. So I don't think I actually need to review this paint. I will do a journal page with this paint, and then I will give you a better review. I'm going to try and make the most out of this paint. I promise. Because I do want to give it a chance. I mean, it's not like I'm going to be throwing it away. I might give it to my daughters to try. No, that's mean. But this is not paint that I would advise you to buy. I mean, usually I can only say that after thorough research and after thorough experimentation, but straight out of the palette, I can tell you guys that this is not paint that you will want to buy if you're looking to start with watercolors, or if you're looking to buy a travel set. Especially those that have experience with watercolor paint, you will not be satisfied with this. This is, you know, this is just not the bargain that I've been hoping for. It was cheap, my expectations were not too high, but since it was on offer, I was hoping that in spite of the low price, this paint would actually give me Cotman satisfaction, and it doesn't. So if you're looking to buy a starter set, go out there and buy Cotman. Don't buy this. Or Van Gogh. Van Gogh by Talents is a very beautiful brand as well. It's comparable with Cotman, but this is not going to make you happy. I am advising strongly against purchasing this paint. What you can also see, even though this leaflet says that when the watercolors dry up, they don't get pale, well, just look at this color chart. It gets pale, and I have to tell you that, as you can see, I'm going to try and show you more clearly, my paints are really wet. The water has soaked into the pans, so the paint on my brush was thick. I wasn't using a watery mixture. I was using full, very heavy paint, and as you can see, it comes out very pale. So the reason why this looks a little bit better is because this paper is a little bit more expensive, is rather expensive and better quality, so the pigments sink into that better. This paper is Canson Monval, a very good brand as well, but as you can see, the paint is not very good at all. I'm gonna leave the unpacking and the unwrapping at this, and I will get back to you with a more substantial review about this paint. I'm going to do a little painting demonstration with this paint. I'm going to tell you all about the frustrations and the surprises that I find in this paint. I think for the first time I already know the outcome of my own review that is yet to come. Thank you for watching thus far, and I'm looking forward to seeing you for the full review next week. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.